In the high-stakes world of international politics, overflexing can lead to unintended consequences. The G7's recent decision to leverage frozen Russian assets to secure a $50 billion loan for Ukraine is a classic example. Intended to bolster Ukraine's war efforts and reconstruction, this move has sparked fierce reactions from Moscow. With threats of retaliatory asset seizures and economic countermeasures, the situation highlights the delicate balance of power. As the West flexes its financial muscles, the risk of escalating tensions loom, proving that sometimes even well-intentioned displays of power can backfire spectacularly.
Welcome to TFI Global, the antidote to mass delusion.
At last week's summit, the leaders of the Group of Seven, G7, nations had a brilliant idea. Using interest from frozen Russian assets to secure a $50 billion loan for Ukraine. Sounds straightforward, right? The plan is to use nearly $300 billion in Russian sovereign funds, which have been sitting frozen in the West since the 2022 Ukraine conflict, as collateral. The G7 would then use the interest generated from these assets, estimated at around $3 to $5 billion annually, to cover the loan's interest. President Biden, speaking at a joint news conference in sunny Puglia, announced that the $50 billion loan would put the money to work for Ukraine and send another reminder to Russian President Vladimir Putin that we are not backing down. He emphasized that Putin cannot wait us out. He cannot divide us and will be with Ukraine until they prevail in this war. Strong words from a stupid guy, the US leader. Most of these frozen assets are chilling in the EU, with US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen recently highlighting the billions in annual interest they are raking in. The G7's grand scheme is to channel these funds to Ukraine's military, general budget, and reconstruction efforts. But of course, there is a catch. The US and its allies are still squabbling over who will bear the risk if they lose control over these Russian assets. Classic. Moscow, never one to miss a beat, has labeled any attempt to use these assets as theft and promised retaliation. The Kremlin said they have frozen around $325 billion worth of assets that ethically, morally, and legally belong to Russia. Under the G7's plan, they intend to use the interest from this pot of money to pay off the annual interest on the $50 billion loan for their manufactured war in Ukraine, while taking a swipe at the fact that the funds aren't expected to arrive until the end of the year, making it another daydreaming project by the West. Kremlin spokeswoman Maria Zakharova was quick to point out that Russia has a significant amount of Western funds and property under its jurisdiction. When asked if there was a specific list of Western assets that Russia could seize in retaliation, she bluntly confirmed, yes, there is. She added that all of it could be subject to Russian countermeasures, with a wide array of political and economic retaliatory actions at their disposal. Russia, however, remains tight-lipped about the specific nature of these actions. Insiders hint that the retaliation plan involves Russia selling off $10 of Western assets for every $1 of Russian assets auctioned in the West. There's even talk of rallying countries like China to join in on the asset freezing fund. Zakharova took the opportunity to remind the West of the treacherous waters they are wading into. She pointed out Russia's resilient economy and its continuous territorial gains. The longer a peace process is delayed, the more territory Ukraine loses. When the dust finally settles, Ukraine might find itself mourning the missed chances of peace and the significant loss of its fertile agricultural lands and mineral-rich territories. So while the G7 leaders might be feeling smug about their big $50 billion loan plan, they might want to keep an eye on what happens next. Overflexing, after all, has its consequences.